Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Zone Coverage. I'm Cody Schoeler here with Ryan Root. As always, we are going to be talking about week 6 of the NFL season, which, I don't know about you, but I feel like it was a little bit of a letdown with some of those big games going on that didn't end up to be the games we expected, but we will still dive into it nonetheless. Ryan, if you want to start it off with your takeaway, I'll let you begin this.
Well, aside from my takeaways, I will acknowledge that I've lost the ongoing bet between the Lions and the Jags because the Jags won a meaningless game in London on Sunday morning.
It meant a lot to them.
And it meant a lot to you, too, as well. So the Lions are still winless, and my faith in them is dwindling by the week. It's pretty much at 1%, 2% right now. But we'll talk about at least the takeaways for the other teams in the league. I've been keeping an eye on this. What's that?
If you want to hit on the wagers we made last week, obviously we had the long-running 2-week one of who will get their first win, Jacksonville or Detroit, which I won. You had a lot of faith in Davis Mills to go over 300 yards, which he did not. He was, fairly close. I think he was at around 240, 243.
He didn't play particularly bad. They just couldn't do anything.
No, he didn't play bad. He played all right. 243. I said Najee Harris was going to be a top 5 running back. He missed it by 0.7 points. He was number 6. So close. I was so close. And then more fantasy points, Lamar or Justin Herbert. I think this is the funniest one because I've got to scroll all the way down under guys like Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, Baker Mayfield to get Lamar Jackson with 11.8 points and Justin Herbert with 11 points. So I won that one.
Very weird.
I thought these were going to be two of the best, quarterbacks of the whole weekend. That was certainly not the case, but that was the wager. So I almost got you on the clean sweep. I was, a Najee Harris point away from a sweep. I was so excited, and then it didn't turn out. So
for my first takeaway of the weekend, we got to talk about this AFC West division because I think going forward, we got 11 more games in the season. Going forward, this division is going to be the one to watch because not only are, the defending back-to-back Super Bowl appearing team, the Kansas City Chiefs in that division still trying to fight for the top spot, but the Raiders and the Broncos had a very competitive game. They got the upper edge, and the Chargers basically got kind of embarrassed by the Ravens. So you have 4 teams in this division that are all at least wild card capable, while you have the NFC West, which a lot of people say is, probably the best division in football. I'll get to that in a little bit, but AFC West, I think, is the division to watch for the rest of the season, considering that there's just so much star power and so much, talent across all 4 of these teams that even the arguably best team in the division, the Chiefs, are struggling. And the up-and-coming team like the Chargers or maybe even the Raiders, they're shocking people week in, week out, and no one can really have a tell on who's going to win this division. Is it going to be Kansas City? Is it going to be Los Angeles? Is it going to be the Broncos for an ultimate underdog? Who knows? But this division is going to be the one to watch.
Yeah, I think out of them all, I'm probably out on the Broncos the most. They've kind of
they're all 500. That's the thing. Every team.
Yeah, no, exactly. It just takes, like I said, once you get to those 3 wins, especially getting them early, it just takes 6, 7 more to, put yourself up there. So they certainly all have wild card capabilities. I think by the end of the season, we'll probably see the Chiefs I think emerge as the team to be in there. They've got a lot of issues they need to work out on defense, but I think they are probably still the best team. LA has a lot of potential. Brandon Staley's doing an incredible job as head coach in his first year there. And then the Raiders, a lot of stuff going on with the Raiders. Not only were they kind of declining after their 3-0 start, then they, had to deal with John Gruden being gone, but they rallied around and they played, one of their best games of the season. So, I like at least probably 3 playoff teams to come from that division. I think the Broncos might be the team that gets left out. But, we're getting to the point where they might be the best, division in football. Obviously, Russell Wilson being out kind of hurts the NFC West and the the Seahawks case. But, in terms of competitiveness on a actual being good level, not, an NFC East last year, who's going to win with 7 wins thing. But in terms of like 4 teams that will probably be close to, the same spot come the end of the season, I think, you're certainly right. This is a division to watch.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we actually get a pretty exciting playoffs come playoff time with some young and exciting teams like the Chargers and like the Ravens and like this Rams team. But yeah, I mean, this AFC West division, it's shocking me every single week to see, the Chargers playing as good as they are and the Chiefs, having to rebuild from the ground up. But it's going to be interesting going forward.
Yeah, my first takeaway, bit of a brag here, but my conference picks are looking pretty good. I forget, what did you go? Bills, Bucks? Did you go at the start of the year?
I believe so. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, so you're looking good too. But I went a little further down the line. I was in on this Rams team from the second they traded for Matthew Stafford, and as Seahawks fans, it was tough to kind of say that and to recognize that. But I thought the Rams were going to have what it takes, and obviously their one loss to Arizona is the only thing keeping them kind of back right now. But I think they certainly have a complete team. Matthew Stafford went out and balled this weekend. Him and Cooper Kupp found that connection again. And then in the AFC, I went with the Ravens. A lot of people were kind of down on them, losing some pieces and stuff like that. But it wasn't that I didn't believe in the Chiefs and the Bills, because I still think those teams are very good. Although the Chiefs are struggling, the Bills certainly seem like the team to beat, and they have the best odds. But the Ravens, I think, they're just looking really good. I mean, they absolutely dismantled the Chargers, who everybody was riding high off of. They beat the Chiefs. They snuck out that really good game against the Browns, and the Ravens came in and just messed them up. It wasn't even close. And Lamar is playing really well. He didn't get a touchdown. I think he had one passing touchdown in this last game, but I mean, they lost J.K. Dobbs and Gus Edwards. This was going to be an incredible rushing attack, and they've adapted on the fly. Latavius Murray, Devonta Freeman, and Le'Veon Bell all had rushing touchdowns yesterday. So, the rushing attack isn't what we thought it was going to be, with J.K. Dobbins kind of having a breakout year, but it's still going to be elite because, it is that team and they've got the guys there, and then the defense, is making plays. But, we're looking at, records and all this stuff, but same thing with the Packers in the NFC. The Ravens lost in week 1. So did the Packers. They're 5-0 since. So I think, that means a lot. And their one win, if they don't get the ball poked out of Lamar's hands, they might be 6-0 right now. So, I think these are 2 teams, the R&R Super Bowl, it's in the mix, I would say.
Well, especially in the AFC North division with the Browns also there, which I know I was somewhat high on the Browns to at least be, a divisional round team in the playoffs and could potentially win that division in the AFC North. But the Ravens, I mean, these past 5 weeks, like you said, they've gone through just injury Armageddon at the running back spot, and then they have touchdowns for 3 different running backs this past weekend against one
3
of the
running backs that were all cut by other teams. Just that nobody else wanted. It's
former
craziest
Pro
part.
Bowlers, former All-Pro
1,000-yard rushers. Yeah,
like it's kind of interesting to watch this Ravens team because we always know that the defense is going to be good. The defense is going to be solid. It's been that way for 2 decades now. But Lamar Jackson, this is almost the definition of putting the team on your back, because the last weekend with the epic comeback he had against the Colts, it's just crazy to see a player like Lamar with so much doubt ever since coming into the league. I being one of them, I would have definitely told you before the season started that I don't think Lamar Jackson's a top 10 quarterback. I definitely would have said that. Now, at week 6 of this season, I'd be stupid not to put him in the top 10 because he's obviously proven he can throw the ball. He can obviously run around, and no one has really been able to catch him or stop him. I was definitely one of those people to say, like, oh, well, Lamar Jackson's, he's a great scrambling quarterback, but once they start putting a QB spy on him, or once they start, mitigating his rushing ability, he's going to be irrelevant because that's what happened to Mike Vick. That's what happened to, Colin Kaepernick or Russell Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Russell Wilson doesn't rush around so much anymore. He just does both because that's the type of quarterback he is. Is he top 5? I don't know. He very well could be at the end of this year.
He's probably playing like a top 5, but that's, as we've done over the offseason, that's such a hard list to make. But
right,
he's in that conversation where you can put him in there and you're justified. Like nobody's going to call you an idiot. And I mean, what he did last Monday, 440 yards. I mean, on like an 85% completion rate. Just he can do whatever it takes. And like you said, everybody can, is like, oh, he can't run forever. Quarterbacks never do. Lamar's a running, like, I mean this in the best sense. He's a running back playing quarterback, but playing quarterback well. Like, he can take hits like a running back. He jukes people out like a running back. Like, he is not a running quarterback. He is a running back that can also throw for 400 yards. And he has such a unique, skill set. And the fact that, I give a lot of props to John Harbaugh for, creating this offense around him. The defense we know is going to be good, but, he's doing exactly what he needs to do for a star quarterback to succeed.
My only thing with Lamar and this Ravens team is there's got to be playoff experience going forward because obviously Patty Holmes has had plenty of playoff experience in his first three years starting, as he's been to 3 straight AFC Championship games. But Baltimore kind of falls off come playoff time, and they definitely need to put their foot on the gas when they get to the playoff.
Did he win? Yeah, he won his first playoff game last year. So obviously losses in his first 2. But so he got on the board there. He's slowly building it up. But it's certainly a long season to go. But in terms of there's some teams at the top kind of struggling, and for these 2 teams to kind of be exceeding expectations, I think it's good for them in the early running of the season. And we want to talk about exceeding expectations. I'll let you take it away here with your next one.
We'll talk about one of the other top teams in this league, which, although their record says they're undefeated, only people in the state of Arizona would probably call this team the best team in the league. I don't think that this Arizona team is the team to beat, really. I do think it's kind of weird with Arizona's case because Pittsburgh last year was they went to an 11-0 start, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's sleeping on Pittsburgh, and they're doing all this crazy stuff, and they're gonna just surprise everybody come playoff time, and then they just get embarrassed by Cleveland in the playoffs.
They really fell off.
So this is a similar situation with Arizona coming to a 6-0 start, and I could see Arizona following in the same footsteps throughout the season as Pittsburgh. But the thing is I think Arizona is obviously playing more impressive football than Pittsburgh was last year. This defense is extremely dynamic and extremely fun to watch. And then you got Kyler Murray, who has, I guess you could argue, less rushing than Lamar Jackson, but more throwing, I guess. They're both outstanding players.
Yeah.
But the fact that Kyler Murray is passing outside of DeAndre Hopkins and they just picked up Zach Ertz just to give him another weapon. I mean, he doesn't really need a DeAndre Hopkins. It's really just a luxury for this offense, but he makes the most out of everything. And that's why I'm saying, as far as the rest of the season goes for Arizona, I'm not saying they're the best team in the league, but just looking at their schedule, there's a good chance. I wouldn't say good chance. There's a decent chance that they could go undefeated. I know that sounds crazy to think about, considering last undefeated team was the 2007 Patriots, right? So
got to the Super Bowl and lost it. Yeah,
it's crazy to think. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, I'm looking at the next few games. Next week, Houston, that's a win. Green Bay, Sunday Night Football, that's going to be extremely.
No, that's a Thursday. That's a Thursday night.
Thursday Night Football. Sorry. And going against San Fran, they could easily beat that team. Carolina, Seattle. Russell Wilson's probably not going to be back by then, so they'll take them out. Chicago, yes. Rams could be close, but they could very well win it like they did earlier this season.
Already.
Detroit, embarrassing win. Indianapolis, they're going to roll them. Dallas could be interesting considering how Dallas is performing, and then Seattle again for the last game. They could go undefeated. I guess every team could go undefeated, but this team at 6-0, I mean, they could very well go 10-0 pretty easily. I mean, the only real team they got to beat in the next 4 weeks is Green Bay.
Yeah,
and Green Bay is not unbeatable, right? They're 5-1, but
the Green Bay and the Dallas games are the games outside of conference division play. Obviously, Rams, Seahawks, Niners are going to give them. We saw the Niners give them a tough go last week. Those games are going to be tough. But outside of that, Packers and Cowboys are probably the games that give them the biggest scare. And I mean, they're certainly in that tier where, yeah, you could realistically see them winning any game against any opponent. I agree that they're probably not the best team right now, because I think we're a little hesitant to give that to a team that's really only doing it this season, but they're certainly in the top 5. And if you're doing power rankings, who's playing the best right now, I mean, the way they, like we talked about the Ravens dismantling the Chargers, the way they, dismantled the Browns, who played tough against Kansas City and lost, played tough against LA and lost. I mean, the Browns are certainly a top 10 team if you're looking at the 8 or 9 teams that could win the Super Bowl with good health. They're certainly up in that conversation. So the Cardinals didn't beat a bad team, and they played really well. So they're certainly up in that conversation. And yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, I don't think my guess is I would probably say they're going to lose to Green Bay. Just because, at some point they are going to lose. I think that's, pretty factual. And I think, Green Bay has been playing really hot since that first one. But yeah, I mean, at this point, I mean, they're, a lock for the playoffs and barring a huge collapse. And if Kyler stays healthy, I mean, he's playing at a level that is doing everything that he needs to do to get this team where eventually it needs to go.
And even Kyler is not indestructible, right? He was slightly questionable going into this game. Obviously, they were going to kind of force him to play almost if he had a sprained ankle, just put some tape on it and go out there and, win us a football game. But, Kyler's not indestructible. And that's the thing with these scrambling quarterbacks is you especially have to make sure that they're safe, because you look at, there's players like Cam Newton who have a 6'5" frame that can, they can take a beating. But then you have players like RG3, you have players like Colin Kaepernick. Historically, scrambling quarterbacks have a tough time of keeping
they get banged up for sure.
So as long as they are careful with Kyler Murray going forward, which doesn't seem, to be too difficult considering no one's really going to tackle him anyways, right? And he's just got such a low, center of gravity, being 5'9". So
yeah, I mean, the way he
definitely entertaining to watch.
He gets out of bounds. He slides. Like, he does not take a lot of hits. He's really
those
good.
baseball slides he does where he slides for 5 yards or so.
I know. Yeah, it's incredible. I want to move on to my next takeaway. Kind of just a quick one, and we'll move on. But Travont Diggs is now into superstar status. It looked for a while that he was not going to continue his streak, but then he did, and he did it in the best fashion so far. He got his 7th interception in 6 games, and it was a pick 6 to bring the Cowboys ahead late in the game. So he wasn't just picking a meaningless pass off. He wasn't just doing it in garbage time like he did last week against Mike Glennon. He got a pick that mattered and probably was his biggest pick of the season. And I mean, he looked great. And what I was looking at some numbers, and you were talking about guys hitting double digits, which he certainly is a good bet to do. Xavier Howard did it last year, but in the last 10 seasons, so I guess going back to 2010, 2011 was the last time this would be the case, but he has enough interceptions to either tie for the lead league in interceptions or own it himself in 5 of the last 10 seasons. And he's played 6 games. This is a 17-game season. I mean, am I predicting an interception every year? No. But I mean, if you showed somebody, oh, look, Travont Diggs had 7 interceptions, you'd be like, oh, that's a good season for him. That's a good season. He's done it in 6 games. I mean, it's just incredible. He could not get an interception for the rest of the year, and he'll probably still lead the league. So, I mean, what he's doing is insane. This is a second-round pick by the Cowboys, and just the fact that he's, going out there, he's taking that next step, is helping that defense. We've talked about him a lot, but, I just think the fact that he did it in a way that, was huge for the team, I think, was another thing. And I want to move on to my next one just because they're related.
Back to back.
Well, they're in the same game because I want to talk about Mac Jones, who threw that interception to Travont Diggs, even though it bounced through a receiver's, hands. Wasn't really his fault, but I think Mac Jones is, at least for this year, going to be the best rookie quarterback. We've seen a lot of struggles from a lot of guys, and Mac Jones, he's had his games, but he's certainly never looked outmatched. And, I mean, this week, yeah, he didn't do incredible. Obviously, he lost, but, I mean, after that pick six, you know what he did? He came right back, challenged Diggs again, and threw a 75-yard bomb to take the lead. If it wasn't for a late Dallas Cowboys touchdown, field goal, they win. But, Mac Jones, let me find it. He was 15 of 21, 230 yards. 229, 2 touchdowns, that 1 interception. But, he's doing, I think, what at least I expected him to do, which was make the right reads. He's not going to throw for 400 yards, but he's not going to have a lot of incompletions. He's not going to throw a ton of egregious interceptions. He's going to operate the offense well, and, he's going to do what he needs to do. And he's done that in almost every game. They've certainly taken more losses than they want to, but I think, he's certainly a high floor. He's playing, doing what he needs to do to get the job done. And, the Patriots don't have the best skill group around him. But, as we watch, Trevor Lawrence is still going to be the best one when it's all said and done, I believe. But in terms of at the end of the year, I think Mac Jones will have the best numbers out of all of them.
Don't you wish you could have put some money on Mac Jones before the season started to say he was going to be Offensive Rookie of the Year? Because the overwhelming favorite was Trevor Lawrence. And I don't think many people would have, disputed that before the season started, because he's just a naturally gifted talent at quarterback. But like I've said in previous shows, Mac Jones is playing pretty boring football for the most part, right? He's making his passes, he's following the system, he's getting acquainted with New England. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, not great for the headlines, right? That's pretty much what it is. But Trevor Lawrence throwing for, at least 1 or 2 touchdowns every week, but then he'll have numerous interceptions. Now that's a headline. You can just bully him to the end of the days. But Mac Jones has a positive touchdown to interception ratio, 7 touchdowns to 6 interceptions.
Yeah, it's close. But
he actually has more passing yards than Trevor Lawrence, which, it's a little ticky-tacky. It's only 7 yards. But if you would have said Mac Jones was going to be Offensive Rookie of the Year before the season started, you'd probably be a Patriots fan, or you'd be a
Alabama fan. Fan.
So, I mean, he's definitely on pace to doing so. And it's funny that you bring this up, because I was thinking about this the other day as well, because Trevor Lawrence is probably going to be the best rookie quarterback in this class when it's all said and done, like you said.
Yeah.
I also think Trey Lance is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in this draft class as well, because he's just got very small kind of just flares of potential as he's taken over for San Fran. But Mac Jones, look, no one said he was going to be the next Tom Brady, but he's going out there and he's completing passes, and he's playing football at the end of the day.
He can be a Kirk Cousins, a Derek Carr, like a really solid guy. He's never going to be the best. But, he can be the guy that, especially on a Patriots team, which is historically a really well put together franchise, he can be the type of guy that, can win games for a team like that. And one more thing I want to mention just to go to his kind of proficiency this year is he's at a 71% completion percentage this year, which I think is the biggest thing. And it kind of goes to what I'm saying is, he's getting the ball in play, getting the ball to his receivers, and so the touchdowns and the yards aren't super gaudy, but he's he is playing well, especially when you kind of see what he's doing. But we didn't know. We thought we didn't know if he was going to start. Cam Newton was going to be the starter. Going into this season, this was the guy who slipped down the boards. Patriots didn't even have to trade up for him, and He's playing really well. I mean, he might be the best of the 3 young Alabama, quarterbacks right now too, if you're looking at Tua and Jalen Hurts. So it'll be interesting to see. But I like what he's kind of done so far this year. But you can move on to your next point. I'll
just say one more thing about Mac Jones is I think the thing that's going to hurt him in this New England franchise, at least a Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick ran New England franchise, the thing that will hurt Mac Jones throughout his career is he's never going to get those big skill guys, right?
Yeah.
Tom Brady was fortunate enough to have Gronk and Randy Moss and Julian Edelman. And, he was fortunate to have some great weapons, but just with how this New England franchise is run now,
I mean, they just splurge in free agency, they
got two good tight ends in Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, right? So they got two great tight ends. It's like, oh, okay, fantastic. Could you maybe, throw some money out to get maybe an Odell Beckham? Could you throw some money out to get a
Kobe Myers?
But he's not a Pro Bowl.
No,
receiver, you know what I mean?
No, I agree that the weapons aren't.
And they'll never draft a really enticing, first round receiver out of Alabama, which
they drafted N'Keal Harry and he kind of sucked. So they try.
Yeah, you're never going to get this explosive receiver out of the draft with New England.
Yeah, safe to say,
agency.
Safe to say, Mac Jones has already had his best receiving core in his career, and it was when he was at Alabama.
Yeah. And obviously, New England doesn't care too much about their star players when they trade them for a 5th-round pick to Carolina. So, anyways, we could talk about, I guess, my next takeaway here. I guess we could talk about the Seahawks a little bit here because, I think the Seahawks are out of playoff contention just from here on out. It doesn't matter if they win the rest of the games going up to Russell Wilson, because even when Russell Wilson is back and playing for this team, it's still just a roll of the dice, really, with Seattle going every single week, because there's games they could have won but didn't. Mm-hmm. There's games they should have lost and obviously do, or obviously have a chance against the Rams, and then it's an interception on the first play on Geno's comeback drive. But if I'm looking at Seattle's schedule for the rest of the year, so Russell's going to miss 4 or 5 weeks probably.
I think he can come back after the bye week. Week 11 would be like the best case scenario.
Perhaps, but who knows if this is the thing that's kind of scary for Seahawk fans is, are they going to take into account Russell's health, or are they going to say, Russ, get back out there because we need to get 10 wins? Like, it's so funny to have, a finger injury bench such a consistently, healthy quarterback like Russell Wilson. But even when Russell Wilson comes back, I'm looking at games late in the season. You got to play the Rams again. You got to play the Cardinals twice in the back half of the season. You got to play Green Bay after the bye. That's if Russell comes back. If Russell doesn't come back, that's a loss right there. I don't trust them to beat San Fran a second time, because I think, that could be just about a toss-up. I would like to say that they can beat Detroit and Houston. But Washington, who knows if Washington's going to shock. It's on the road.
I think we know Washington's bad.
It's on the road in D.C. Who knows? That's the great thing about this league, is that every game is always a toss-up. Doesn't matter what team you are or what team you're facing. And considering it's the Seahawks that we've been seeing this season, where they lose to Tennessee and Minnesota in kind of embarrassing fashion, they lose to Pittsburgh last night in embarrassing fashion, I would say, again, because they have a comeback drive opportunity late in the game, and they run the ball twice and throw a screen pass, and I think they get like a net yard total of like 2 yards or something like that. The play calling is off. Everything is out of sorts. You got DK Metcalf talking smack to Shannon Sharp this morning on Twitter. Everything is just all over the place, and they're out of the playoff picture. That's why I'm saying the AFC West is the divisional watch, because the NFC West is looking a lot like the AFC North last year, where you had the Ravens, Steelers, and Browns competing, and then the Bengals were just out there running around, right? So the Seahawks are already out of playoff contention. Doesn't matter if Russell comes back probably next week. I'd say it. If Russell came back next week and played, it doesn't matter. They're done.
Yeah, we'll see. It takes one hot stretch down the the end of the season to get back in there, and when you've got Russell Wilson, I would never write them out completely, but it's not looking great for them. You've got to win games, especially when as winnable as they were in overtime against teams like Tennessee and Pittsburgh. You got to win that one against Minnesota. So they're going to have to win some games that they're not expected to win down the stretch if they do want to end up even sniffing the playoffs. So it's certainly not looking great for them. I want to talk about another team that I think is in a similar boat. I think the Panthers are done. They were the hot 3-0 team, and they have fallen flat since then. I never truly believed in them. I think they were going to be they're playing frisky, but I was never completely sold on them. The defense is pretty good, but I just think they went 3-0. They've now lost 3 in a row. They'll end up 7-8 wins maybe, but the pipe dreams of them being a playoff team, I think, are over. Certainly if Christian McCaffrey comes back, there's a chance. They were obviously won the games with him, lost games without him, but I don't trust Sam Darnold to lead a team to the playoffs, and it's pretty much as simple as that.
If you give this team a free agency this summer, then they will be a wild card team. But obviously, first year with Sam Darnold under center.
I mean, what are they going to improve? Like, what do they need to improve?
They can improve the defense a little bit, obviously, because defense can at least put your offense back out there and give them favorable field.
We were hoping that Sam Darnold would do the Ryan Tannehill and flourish when he's away from Adam Gase, but I just don't think Sam Darnold's that guy. Like, I don't think he has what it takes.
What does Ryan Tannehill have to work with compared to Sam Darnold? He has Derrick Henry, who many people would say is the best running back in the league. Sam Darnold has CMC, which I would be one of those people who say he's the best running back in the league. But this is the second straight year where he's having injury issues, so you don't really have CMC week in, week out. The receiving power for Tennessee is definitely better than the receiving power in Carolina.
Was it last year, though? With just like A.J. Brown and Corey Davis? DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson are good.
They were solid, but if you throw CMC into the mix that's why I'm saying full strength with both of these offenses. Yeah, Tannehill can do whatever he wants. He can either hand it off with a crisp grip on the ball to Derrick Henry, or he could throw a slant to Julio or a deep ball to A.J. Brown. Full force Carolina, Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. It's like, yeah, they are good and solid receivers, but you obviously want that go-to number one guy, because who is the number one guy across those two? You could kind of throw a debate with
it's DJ Moore,
or is it Robbie Anderson? Considering him and Sam Darnold played a lot. Who
Robbie Anderson's having a worse year this year, but I think the thing it comes down to, like, are the Panthers any better because they have Sam Darnold than Teddy Bridgewater? Like, there's
more potential than when Teddy Bridgewater was there.
Like,
if this team of free agency, they will make the playoffs.
Not with Sam Darnold, unless they get a quarterback in free agency. Go for trade for Aaron Rodgers.
The hate on Sam Darnold, it just doesn't make sense to me, considering that. You give 6 weeks to the guy in a brand new team. He played 3 years for a terrible Jets organization, and people always gave him smack for that. But he goes to Carolina, and the smack just follows him when he starts 3-0, and people are like, "Oh, Carolina's kind of good," and then they lose 3 straight, and there's like, "Oh, Sam Darnold's just a bust. He's terrible." It's like Sam Darnold is always 1 step forward, 2 steps back with fans, and it is kind of like disheartening when you talk about a career where you're drafted by the worst sports organization in the NFL, and you're expected to make something out of nothing. Like, that is tremendously hurting his legacy, and is tremendously hurting his first year with a brand new team. So,
he's also hurting his legacy by having a 40% completion percentage against the Vikings, and he's throwing
I'm not saying he's the greatest quarterback of all time.
3 picks against Philadelphia. If this was a different situation, they lost their first one to Dallas. If they were losing to Dallas and to, good teams, that's fine. But they lost to Philadelphia and Minnesota in gross games where the other teams might have even played worse than them. So I just think, that's where we'll see. They've got the Giants and the Falcons coming up. I just, this is a playoff. This is a league that is so important. The quarterback position is so important. If you look at the guys who are going to make the playoff, they're all going to be top, 12 maybe quarterbacks, if that. and Sam Darnold, the hope was that he just needed to get away from Adam Gase to be good, and he might be better, but I think, we would be seeing something a lot better from him if, he really was going to be the guy going forward.
Well, we'll have to see how they finish the year, because I think there's still potential for them to go 10 wins. I think there's potential for them to go 10 wins.
The Seahawks will have more wins than the Panthers at the end of the year.
I'll take you up on it. I think the Panthers will have more wins than the Seahawks.
Yeah.
That will be our ongoing bet following the Detroit and Jacksonville bet we had. I'll go with my next takeaway here, and that's about Aaron Rodgers just, taking down the Chicago Bears for the nth time in a row, right? So
owning them.
There was that clip that was trending around on Twitter of him yelling to the crowd, like, I still own you. And, the Packers against NFC North teams is just it's just not a contest at the end of the day. It doesn't matter if it's, I think they won both matchups against Chicago last year, and Chicago was a playoff team going 500. But you put Aaron Rodgers against Minnesota, Detroit, and Chicago, there's 6 wins. You can damn near guarantee 6 wins from the Packers every year with Aaron Rodgers there, which is why I beg the question, does Aaron Rodgers really want to leave at the end of the day? Because at the end of the day, you're going to have a guaranteed playoff spot.
Yeah, but
you get a divisional championship, and you can play. You'll be one of the top half-seeded teams in the league. You'll play the worst playoff teams in the beginning, and then you will have to put all of your chips into play in the NFC Championship game, which I've said it before. The entire Packers organization, except for Aaron Rodgers, is not to blame for these past however many NFC championships he's lost. It's none of the responsibility goes towards Aaron Rodgers, but then when he beats these terrible NFC North teams, it's like, oh, Aaron Rodgers just owns this division. He's just incredible. Yeah. So does he really want to leave this division at the end of the day, when the rumor going around last offseason was he was going to go to Denver, and Denver was going to have this real good team just with one player getting added in there? Does Aaron Rodgers want to be in the same division as Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Derek Carr and the Raiders team? Like, does he really want to do that at the end of the day?
I mean, can the Broncos with Aaron Rodgers be first place in the AFC West right now?
Could Aaron Rodgers be first in the NFC West for if he played for San Fran? Would he be first in that division? I mean, these are very tough divisions.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing
Mahomes would be the favorite, but
yeah. I mean, I don't think Aaron Rodgers wants to necessarily leave the NFC North. I just think he wants to leave the Packers, and it is what it's going to be. I mean, this is a team that drafted his replacement without telling him before he felt he was ready. This is a team that refuses to draft wide receivers for him. He had to force them to go trade and get Randall Cobb back. So he wants to go to a team that will like buy into him and will surround him, with guys. We'll draft players, for him. And I think, we'll see what that list of teams is this year. I think it might look a little different. I think Denver's probably still in play. I don't know if the Packers are going to be hesitant to trade him, inside the NFC, but could the Panthers be in play? I mean, we'll see. It was such a weird timing last year, but I think he would love to trade the Packers for another team and stay in the division, obviously, because he certainly owns those teams. Maybe
if you put Aaron Rodgers on Minnesota, that'd be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because Minnesota just has such a ceiling with Kirk Cousins. They have Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen to work with, and a top 5 back in Dalvin Cook. But Kirk Cousins just has that ceiling that has been reached for these past few seasons.
Yeah.
You put Aaron Rodgers on that team, Minnesota would be ridiculous. But I'm sure the Packers don't want to repeat history with Brett Favre moving to Minnesota after.
No, I mean,
but
they shipped Brett Favre to the Jets. They weren't trading him to Minnesota. He wanted to go to Minnesota.
Aaron Rodgers would not go to the Jets today. No.
Well, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to see an Aaron Rodgers Super Bowl run thrown in there just to piss everybody off, and then him and Devontae Adams both leave in the offseason. It would be quite a funny thing to see. But we're going to get into our last takeaways real quick. Mine, the Bengals are sneaky good. I was really hesitant to kind of jump on that. And I still don't like the Bengals are not a playoff team. I don't care what the record says. The Bengals are not a playoff team. But can they be the Miami Dolphins of last year? The Raiders? Can they be even the Cardinals last year? The team that is good enough to get into maybe they sneak into the playoffs conversation, not actually do it, obviously. But come next year, they're obviously in a tough division. But next year, this might be a team that's got some legit chances. But I mean, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase is absolutely electric. They've got other guys there to throw to. They've got a decent stable of running backs. The defense, I think still needs some improvements, but they've got Jesse Bates and Trey Hendrickson and some guys there. But I just I think it's time to put some, especially for me, some like moderate respect on the Bengals and realize they are not a 5 or win team anymore. They're a 7-win team or something like that, 8-win team. Not ready to make noise yet, but they're creeping up there.
I like the comparison you put with the Raiders and Dolphins last year being the Bengals this year, because that kind of is the vibe that they have going on, considering obviously they're not going to win that division. They may very well not be a wild card team. They will just be on the brink of that conversation. But this is one of those teams that is a year away from being a wild card team. And there's plenty of those teams around in the league, but this team is especially just that one step away from being a playoff team. You wonder what Joe Burrow could do when he was healthy the entire year for Cincinnati last year. They could have been a 6-win team. Joe Burrow is he's a smart quarterback at times, and he's a dumb quarterback at times, especially when it comes to giving himself up against defenders. He's still thinking that this is a college atmosphere, and I just wince every time that he runs past the line of scrimmage because I know he's just going to throw his body and put it on the line. And you just can't do that with a number 1 overall pick last year and a franchise quarterback. I hope he gets more responsible when it comes to scrambling. But Cincinnati is one of those one-step-away teams. I definitely believe that. And Jamar Chase being on this team, having that connection between him and Joe Burrow, obviously a lot of people raised eyebrows of them not picking Penei Sewell in the draft. I was one of them because I figure you want to protect the guy that just had a season injury.
Yeah, I was definitely one of them.
It seems to be paying off. They're 4-2. They've had impressive wins, and they've had impressive losses. I'm thinking of the Green Bay game last week.
Yeah,
they almost won that game just based off of missed kicks alone. But it was almost a win against one of the best teams in the NFC. So this team is sneaky good. Yeah,
I do want to say I'm not getting too overhyped on them. Their wins are against the Lions, the Jaguars, the Steelers, and the Vikings. Not great wins. The rest of the schedule is Ravens, Jets, Browns, Raiders, Steelers, Chargers, Niners, Broncos, Ravens, Chiefs, Browns. Not a lot of easy wins, if wins at all, in that schedule. So obviously they've played the easier part of their schedule, and that has a lot to do with where they're at. But I think, they competed with the Packers. If they'll compete with some of these teams, and that's why I say, they're a year away. I'm not, calling for them. They're going to get 9 wins, sneak into the wild card. That would be wild, and we'll really see as they get into this stretch. But I think, it's time. We see a lot of teams kind of fail to make that next step up. They kind of stay in that area, and so the Bengals are on their way to doing that.
So, kind of in an opposite sort of light with it is, the Bengals are sneaky good. I kind of believe that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may be sneakily kind of bad. And let me kind of phrase what I'm trying to say here, because obviously I think Tampa Bay is one of the best teams in the league. Don't get me wrong. But there's things that worry me about them because, they can beat the bottom feeding teams, right? They absolutely destroyed Atlanta and they destroyed Miami. But then you have there's a couple of tiers with these teams, right? You have the bottom feeding teams, the Jaguars, the Lions, the Falcons. You got the teams that are, have some potential but are just not there. You got the Eagles, or you have the other team that they were close with was Dallas, but they're not in that category. I'm thinking Eagles. I'm thinking New England, and then you have the potential playoff teams like Dallas, obviously, and you have whatchamacallit, obviously the Rams,
Yeah.
these good teams that they're playing against are either very close or it's a loss against the Rams. Like Dallas, they're a field goal away from losing against Dallas. Atlanta, they just put in work against them. The Rams, they lose to the Rams. The Rams look like the number one team in the league. New England, everyone thought, oh, Tom Brady's going to come into town and you guys should have kept me, and he's just going to throw 400 yards and just destroy the Patriots. Didn't even have a passing touchdown, and Mac Jones actually played pretty well. And they won that game by 2 points. And personnel-wise, this should have been a 20-point game. But Miami, 45-17. Oh, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are great. Philadelphia, 28-22. We've talked about it. Philadelphia has kind of a weirdly decent defense.
I mean, yeah.
They're not a bottom-feeding team by any means.
That game was also deceptively close because Tampa Bay was basically up 2 scores the whole time. Philadelphia scores, one more time, bring it to 6, and Tampa Bay is at the 3-yard line. So realistically, that's a 35-22 game, but shouldn't have been that, even as close as it was. But so the scores not necessarily is indicative of, the way that, the game actually looked. But yeah, I'll give you some on that.
But if you put Dallas against this team again, who do you think would win?
I mean, I would still go with Tampa Bay because Tampa Bay is, there's a lot of teams in this mold. Great offenses with decent enough defenses. The Chiefs have, the bad defense, but, the Packers, the Cowboys, none of these teams have, even the Rams, their defenses, hit or miss. They don't have top-tier defenses. They have solid defenses. And if it wasn't for the Bucs losing all of their kind of secondary, I think they'd be a little bit better. So I still, believe in the Bucs. But I think what we're seeing across this year is we're going into this season going, how do we not get Bucs Chiefs in the Super Bowl again? The Bucs brought everybody back. The Chiefs improved their offensive line. It's just going to happen again. And we're seeing that these teams have flaws. We're seeing that there's ways to beat every team in the NFL, and it's, extremely wide open. I think that's the thing. Bucs are probably still, one of the top 3 teams right now.
Win that division, no problem. Don't get me wrong.
But just, there's holes.
Right. They're playing a Chicago team and a New Orleans team the week after. Chicago, I don't particularly see as a blowout. It could be a blowout. All these games either seem to be a blowout or a one-score game. Obviously, that seems to be pretty much every football game in existence.
It comes down to the defense. If their defense makes enough plays, because the offense is going to...
They could bully Justin Fields to double-digit sacks and just completely destroy them. But they go against New Orleans. I mean, New Orleans beat them twice last year as a different team, don't get me wrong. But New Orleans, I could see that being a one-score game within 6 points. But then Washington, that could go either way. Giants is a blowout. Indianapolis is a blowout. Atlanta is a blowout. And then Buffalo, I'm not taking them over Buffalo, especially right now. And
we'll see.
They have a favorable schedule because they have a favorable division, obviously. But even the out-of-division games, they're favorable. Don't get me wrong. But I don't know if they're that team.
Looks like they're playing the NFC East this season as well, so that lucks out on it's them, not the NFC West. But yeah, I mean the Buccaneers, they went from being clearly the number 1 team above everybody else to now they're in the mix with the Bills, the Ravens, the Rams, whoever, the Packers, whoever else you want to put in there. They're in the mix for that, and I think that's good. It's going to create a lot more intrigue come the end of the season. So I'm excited for that. We're going to quickly go into our stars of the weekend. Don't need to spend too much time on these. I'll let you kick it off with your third guy here.
Third guy here, wasn't a fan of just the performance of the team, but in terms of just kind of an out of nowhere good game, I'll give credit to Alex Collins from the Seahawks because, any game where you go over 100 yards rushing, especially on a Seahawks offense, I got to give him at least a little bit of credit. Not saying he's the last person to blame in that loss is kind of a better way to say it. And
stepping in as a backup and playing well.
Would Chris Carson have that same game? Who knows? They're not particularly the same back, but Alex Collins, I got to give him credit because he's had, an up and down career as of late, and I'll give him a little credit. He's my third star.
Yeah, I've got some young guys kind of stepping out this week. First, I want to give some love to Donovan Peoples-Jones. Might be the only time we recognize a guy who got 4 catches, but when 2 of those go for touchdowns, including one where he just could not be denied and just trucks a defender. The other one, I believe, was the Hail Mary at the end of the first half, which, I mean, our team's going to start practicing how to defend end of the first half Hail Marys, because this is back-to-back ones where defenders just stood there like, they couldn't jump and let a team get a fairly easy touchdown for a Hail Mary. But he really stepped up with Jarvis Landry out, Odell Beckham leaving at some point, getting a little banged up. Donovan Peoples-Jones, second-year guy, goes over 100 yards, gets 2 touchdowns, and is, looking like a guy going forward. And, when Jalen Waddle's another young receiver who played well, but I wanted to give some love to Donovan Peoples-Jones, who stepped up in a loss.
Those 2 touchdowns to Baker Mayfield's name made him look, like not a running team a little bit on the stat sheet, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have a 100-yard rusher this game. It was Baker Mayfield who got 2 touchdowns to the same receiver, but got to give credit to someone who I didn't know of before the game, right? My second star, I'll give props to Jonathan Taylor, considering that I think Indianapolis is kind of a joke of a team going forward.
Maybe they're turning it around.
Yes, they beat a terrible Houston team. Obviously, Houston is not going to put up a fight against anybody other than week 1 where they got the win.
They put up a fight against New England last week.
But Indianapolis, you can't trust them going forward.
No, God, no.
Carson Wentz, I think we all overhyped him a little bit this offseason going to Indy. We thought this was going to be like a 10-win team, and I think they're probably a 5 or 6-win team. But Jonathan Taylor, I have to give a little bit of credit. Almost, 150 yards from scrimmage, multiple scores, and a blowout win over the Texans.
Yeah, I mean,
they can take the win for right now.
Yeah, he had the 83-yard rush. He averaged 10 yards a carry. Real good game, and I went against him in fantasy, so it hurt the whole time to watch. I'm going to go to another guy that a lot of people might not have known before this week, Khalil Herbert. 6th-round rookie out of Virginia Tech, stepping up with David Montgomery out, Damian Williams on the IR, and Khalil Herbert comes out of nowhere, 97 yards, gets a touchdown, and it's always just good to see that guy kind of step up. The running back position has a lot of that, although it was in a loss. But for a guy who we didn't even know if he'd even make a roster, didn't even know what he would do this entire season, to take his first career start and have a good game with it, got to give some credit to him.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely know how to find some of the people who not many people have heard of, but considering that the Bears had a little bit of a positive spin this weekend, even though they got owned by Aaron Rodgers, is always something to point out. But number 1 star for this weekend for me, I'll give it to TJ Watt from the Steelers, because although he had kind of a quiet performance throughout the game, when it mattered most, he went out there and he had 2, game deciding plays, with obviously the game winning, strip fumble on I almost called him Tavares Jackson on
might as well be
on Geno Smith. He is one of the best defenders, if not one of the best players in this league. Don't get me wrong. He's probably a top 10, top 15 player in this league.
Wait. We did top 5 edge rushers over the offseason, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And
where was he on your list?
I threw some. He was not on my list, or he was at 5 or something like that.
No, he was not on your list.
Well, I have to give him credit when he beats my team. So, obviously, just changed the game with his performance. I'm not going to put him above like Aaron Donald or something like that as the best defender in the league, but he changes the game for the Steelers team, for a Steelers team that is just chasing a false hope right there. But
I mean, the thing, he had the 2 sacks. He didn't have the craziest game that's earned some defensive players some love here before, but 3 passes defended, which for a defensive lineman, an outside linebacker, means he's getting up and swatting passes, which we saw, so he's preventing, first downs in multiple different ways, and he is absolutely, a game wrecker, that's for sure. And my last star is going to be split between two people because it is the Dak Prescott to CeeDee Lamb connection. Dak Prescott, leading passer for the week, 445 yards. CeeDee Lamb, leading receiver, 149 yards, 2 touchdowns for CeeDee Lamb. Dak had another one in that game. And, of course, the game-winning play action, pass in overtime, the touchdown. I love to see the teams just go and score the touchdown, in overtime, although when you get the ball second, which I think they had it first, but when you get it second, no, they did lose it. Patriots had it. They got the ball back. When you can win with a field goal, but when you're Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, let's keep it in-house. Let's go and get the win. And, they're certainly playing like some of the best players. Dak Prescott is certainly playing like one of the best quarterbacks. I want to go into a little MVP conversation as we end it here. I don't know if you've got your list, Ryan, but I
can give you my thoughts on it though.
Yeah, I'll tell you mine, and you can tell me kind of where you disagree if you do, because maybe you'll have some other people up there. But I'm gonna keep Kyler Murray at 1 as long as the Cardinals are undefeated. I think that's pretty fair, and he's playing really well. Like you've mentioned, he's not even just throwing to DeAndre Hopkins. He's making plays all over the field, so he's going to stay at 1 for the time being. I've got Lamar Jackson up to 2. Obviously, he was not on our list last week because we did it before the Monday Night Football game, where he had one of the probably the best performance of the season. The passing numbers aren't going to be incredible, but I know this was as of last week. He had more total yards than over half the NFL teams. So he is, back to playing like his MVP self, throwing through the air even a little bit more. Then I've got Tom Brady. Tom Brady's going to stay near the top for me as long as, he's, leading the league in yards and then kind of doing some of these things, scoring a lot of touchdowns. I just think that narrative is certainly going to be there with him being a 44-year-old playing like he is. And then I want to go with, who do I have next? Dak Prescott. Like I mentioned, Dak Prescott, he's obviously going to get a lot of buzz because of the Cowboys, but he's up there in yards. They're 5-1, playing like one of the best teams. Yeah, Dak Prescott's 5th in yards. He's also got 16 touchdowns, which, Mahomes has 18. Then you've got Brady, Stafford, Dak. So, that's really impressive. And then Matthew Stafford, basically this last spot, I want to keep Derrick Henry there. Like I said, as long as Derrick Henry's threatening that single-season rushing yard record, which we'll see what he does tonight, he's going to be in the conversation. But I'm going to give the last spot to Matt Stafford. I think Josh Allen is certainly in consideration there too. But Matt Stafford had a good bounce-back game, and he's 4th in yards, 3rd in touchdowns, so he's up there as well. And then there's some other guys. Like I said, throwing Josh Allen, Derrick Henry, Patrick Mahomes certainly isn't having the best year or the best stats, but he's still an incredible player. He's leading the league in touchdowns. Give him, a spot up there if you want. And Justin Herbert fell off this week after a bad performance, but he's got the potential to go back up there for sure.
Yeah, Justin Herbert definitely fell off my rankings for MVP, but
yeah, he was up there.
We're going to see for the rest of the season, week by week, this list is going to fluctuate dramatically.
Yeah.
Because
I think that's the thing.
As opposed to last year, where it seemed like the front runners throughout the season was like Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, and then it was Aaron Rodgers for the remainder.
And Josh Allen was in there.
Josh Allen was a little bit,
time, but he never really took the number 1 spot. He was always kind of there. But,
right.
Yeah.
I think this number 1 spot is extremely. No one is going to know who the number 1 quarterback is for the rest of the season because you could make a case for probably about 4 or 5 guys. And one guy that I definitely would acknowledge in my top 5 would be Dak Prescott, considering he can just throw the ball like crazy to CeeDee and Amari Cooper. And they'll have still a great running offense with Zeke Elliott and Tony Pollard. But Dak Prescott, they're a 5-1 team who are a field goal away from being 6-0 right now. That's people need to acknowledge that more. They're a field goal away from being a 6-0 team and taking down the Super Bowl champions in week 1. Okay. This Dallas team knows how to compete. They are a good team. You have to acknowledge Dak as a top 5 MVP candidate, at least through this week. But right now it seems between, Kyler and Lamar. Record-wise, you pick Kyler. Passing-wise, you pick Kyler. Total yards-wise and, carrying the team to a certain degree, you'd obviously pick Lamar. But that's pretty neck and neck for me, considering that I think the 6-0 start for the Cardinals is, they're not the team to beat, like I said. I think the Ravens are probably a top 5 team alongside with the Cardinals. You could argue which is the better team to beat, the Cardinals or the Ravens. And Lamar Jackson, I think as of right now, has the edge, considering he's had back-to-back, great performances with his team. Obviously, they made the Chargers look silly. He didn't have a great performance against the Chargers, but his team did, and the team does carry you up a little bit in the conversation. So I'd pick Lamar going forward. Josh Allen's probably not my top 5 going forward. I think Tom Brady's a little lower on my list than on yours. And Matt Stafford, it's tough. At this point right now, it's tough because I think, a week or two from now, this list will be mostly different with probably one or two guys who remain in there,
Aaron Rodgers, we didn't even mention, but if they beat the Cardinals in, 2 weeks, they're certainly up there. But I think, you're going to have to be a top 2 team in your conference probably to win this. Obviously, like I said, if the Cardinals go 16-1, 15-2 or whatever, Kyler's probably going to win this, and deservedly so because he's playing. But you've got, 8 guys playing like MVP caliber guys. The odds right now on FanDuel of Dak, Allen, and Murray all tied at the top with Brady, Rodgers, Stafford, Herbert, Mahomes, and then Lamar. So Lamar's pretty far down the list. So, there's some good value, I think, there with Lamar because, if the Ravens make a run at the number 1 seed and he, does this, I think obviously, he's won it before. But, obviously we're going to see losses are going to fluctuate these teams because if Herbert had beat Lamar, the Chargers had beat the Ravens, Lamar's not in this, list probably, and Herbert might be at number 2. So there's a lot of stuff that can change. And, Derrick Henry, if he's challenging for that single season rushing record, then he's got to be in the conversation. There's a lot of good quarterback play. He probably doesn't win it, but he will continue that quest tonight, Monday night game. We've got the Bills and the Titans. Right now, it is a 6-point game with the Bills favored, although Tennessee is at home, and I don't disagree with that. I think the Bills, they're taking care of business, and I think that continues tonight.
Josh Allen's going to go to they play in Nashville, I believe, right? They don't play in Memphis. I think they.
No, I think it's Nashville or close to Nashville at least.
They're going to go to Tennessee. Bills are going to do exactly what they've been doing these past few weeks. The Bills are yet again another one of those teams that are 4-1 as of right now. They could very well be 5-1 by the end of the night, but they're 4-1 after a week 1 kind of weird performance. This is the same team alongside the Green Bay Packers of being a team that everyone was like, they lost week 1. What's going on? And then
they've been rolling.
Then they just go right back into what they were doing. So this Titans team, obviously they're going to be, a little overhyped by some Titans fans and some Julio Jones fans and some Derrick Henry fans. And, I do think this game has a potential of being somewhat high scoring, but we talk about how, show-stopping this Bills team is. Not only Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and even Dawson Knox coming out of nowhere.
Yeah. Emmanuel Sanders.
And we haven't even been looking at Cole Beasley's direction, right? No. So this defense is just weirdly good at times. They make big plays. Tre'Davious White, Micah Hyde, as well as Jerry Hughes coming out on the edge. Like there's just and Tremaine Edmonds as well. I mean, this defense is sneakily good. I think Derrick Henry will probably have a 100-yard game, but this isn't going to be Julio or A.J. Brown's game, nor will it be Tannehill's. I think a lot of it's going to go down to Derrick Henry. But then the moment you give that ball to Josh Allen, it's going to be a clinic.
I mean, saying Derrick Henry is going to have a 100-yard game means nothing about the defense. If
Right.
he's playing, if the Titans were playing the rest of the 31 team, NFL team's Pro Bowl roster, I would still say Derrick Henry's going to have a 100-yard game. He just is that guy. I think the Bills defense is pretty sturdy, and they might hold Derrick Henry to close to 100 yards, maybe like 110, and that would be really impressive of them to do that. I do think that this could possibly be the most legitimate test that the Bills have this season. Obviously, that Pittsburgh game was weird. Pittsburgh came out firing on all cylinders,
Didn't
and I
just
think
destroy Kansas City last week.
well, that's what I'm saying is like the Chiefs. I mean, like the Titans might give them a more legitimate threat than the Chiefs because like we've talked about with the Chiefs, their defense is just terrible, and that game was never really in question because the Bills' offense is that good. So, although I think the Chiefs are a better team, I think the Titans might give them a harder time because of the way that they can play. So, can the Titans win this game? Sure. I mean, they can control the game with Derrick Henry and make enough plays. In the passing game, I think their defense, needs, a little bit of improvement. But I think the Bills, they're in that team. They're in that tier where they beat the teams they're supposed to beat, and they're supposed to beat this team. They probably do beat this team. So I mean, it's just kind of what it is. But if the Titans give them a run for their money, I wouldn't be totally shocked. I'd be a little surprised, but nothing crazy.
I think Josh Allen's going to have another 300-yard game. This Bills team is going to score over 30 points. I think the Titans will score over 20. Not going to say a double-digit win, but Bills will get at least 30, and Titans will get at least 20, but they won't exceed 30. So this will be a Bills win. They'll be 5-1. People will still be talking about the Ravens and the Chiefs, even though the Chiefs aren't a top team in the league right now. They'll still be talking about the Chargers, and the Bills will just be sitting there, and they're like, all right, we'll just wait till the playoffs and divisional champs and maybe.
I think this will be an interesting game to see from the Bills defense because they played good last week, but got a lot of mistakes from Mahomes. But I'm just waiting to see because, like we talked about, they haven't really been tested other than the Chiefs, especially during that stretch before them. But because if the Bills defense is top 15, in the league, then they're a really, really, really legitimate. Not that they aren't already, but they're like a top tier Super Bowl, contender, like top 2 maybe if this defense is legit, because that offense is certainly good enough. So we're waiting to see these tests that they get. The Chiefs were one of them, which they passed with flying colors. Now they get, sort of a test with the Titans. It's probably a playoff team because somebody has to win the AFC South. But yeah, I agree with kind of your statement with the Bills win this pretty easily. It's not going to be a huge blowout. This game will be meaningful in the fourth quarter, but the Bills probably take it by 11 or so with a pretty solid game.
Josh Allen's going to go out there and still just put the heat on this Titans defense. Yeah. And like you said, someone's going to win that AFC South division. It's probably just the least competitive division in all of football. And, the AFC East isn't really far off with Miami and the Jets and the Patriots playing decent games week in, week out. But both these teams are kind of in similar positions in their division. They don't have a ton of competition really following them, but someone's got to win it. And just game plan wise and just culture wise, performance wise, this will be a Bills win. And Josh Allen's going to perform under primetime coverage once again, and he's going to show everybody that he's that guy and he deserves that contract.
Yeah, maybe he'll hurdle someone again. Who knows? You never know with Josh Allen. He's certainly a fun player to watch. But that's going to do it for us today. We will be with you again on Thursday to preview the Week 7 weekend slate. Bring your fantasy football questions, and we can hopefully not give you the wrong answers. I hope we helped some people out over the weekend. I know Sam Darnold over Kirk Cousins wasn't the greatest call, but we're trying our best. But yes, we'll be here again on Thursday, and then again, same time next week as we do it all again. But remember to follow Dash Sports on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok to keep up with what we've going on, as long as we, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dash Sports, and check out the website, dashsports.tv, to keep up with zone coverage and our NFL coverage, as well as some Pac-12 football going on. But that'll